teacher makes false claim of me faking an injury, so my mom messes with her career. I apologize for the format, I'm typing this on my cracked phone screen. I, 15, have had a long and elaborate history with injuries, especially breaking my arm. Starting from literally the day I was born, my health has been complicated. I have a few conditions but none serious enough to impact my daily life as I know it. I have a very weak immune system and somewhat easy to break bones. On top of that, I am the definition of clumsy, and I'm also a huge idiot who gets herself into dangerous situations for fun. My mom, 40, has obviously known me from birth and knows just the extent of my weird bad luck and health issues. I've broken my arms a collective 13 times over my entire life, and almost every time I got injured or sick, it seems somebody had something to say about it. IDKY, but teachers just love to say that students that get hurt often are attention-seeking fakers, and a lot of relationships with authority figures have been harmful because of this. This all took place around 7th grade. I was 12 at the time and I had broken my wrist by climbing on top of something I wasn't supposed to and then falling off like a dumbass. My wrist was in a Velcro cast since I'm very allergic to the regular cast material, as they figured out through many cases of trial and error. My teacher, let's call her Mrs. Tablet since this took place while we were learning about Egyptian tablets. She taught history and our personalities clashed a bit. I'm more of a creative, adventurous, free thinker type and she was very conservative, by the book, and proper. We hadn't had any real issues before this but we just didn't mesh well. She was absent one day and we had a sub in. I knew the sub as one of my teacher's friends and one of my bully's mom. I didn't like her but I was still respectful in class and just tried to get my work done. She got me in trouble for doodling on my paper once or twice but other than that everything was fine, or so I thought. The next day I went into class like usual. We were working on an assignment about Egypt and their tables when Mrs. Tablet called me over to her desk. I went over, thinking she'd just get onto me for drawing on the back of my homework or something, only to get bombarded with a bunch of really weird questions. The interaction went something like, "Teacher. So, Fire, do you know why I've called you up here? I know Fire isn't my Reddit name but it's my IRL nickname so I'm using it here." Me. "No ma'am, I can't say that I do." Teacher. "How long have you had that cast?" Me. "About a week now." "Why?" Teacher. "Do you really need that cast?" Me. Yes?" Teacher. "Well, the substitute told me she saw you take it off." Me. "It's a cast, I can't take it off, it would hurt." Teacher. "So if I asked the class they'd say you need that cast?" Me. "Yes?" Teacher. "And if I called your parents right now they'd say the same thing?" Me. "Yes, they were the ones who took me to the hospital." And she did this in front of the whole class. I was eventually dismissed and people looked at me weird for the rest of class. As I later learned, apparently the substitute had told Mrs. Tablet that I'd taken off my cast as soon as I left class. I didn't, and that I threw it in my locker like, "Ha ha ha, I'm getting away with doing less work." So basically she pretended I was a bad guy in a crappy high school movie. IDKY she said this but it had my teacher convinced that I was a liar and a fake. I technically could remove my cast since it was Velcro but that would have been extremely painful and it's not like I could just walk around without it. I wasn't going to make a big deal about it at the time but it turns out she was serious about calling my parents. But she made the mistake of calling my mom. Now me and my mother don't have a perfect relationship. She has anger issues so we don't always get along well. But she loves me very much and doesn't let people like this mess with me if she can stop it. According to my mom, Mrs. Tablet called her all cocky and said things like, "Apparently your daughter is wearing a cast, did you know that?" And, well, we all know how dramatic teenage girls can be. Especially unique kids like her. She apparently even threatened to have me suspended before my mom stopped her and tore her to shreds for talking about her child like that. I don't think I'm allowed to repeat what was said but by the end, Mrs. Tablet had to retreat with her tail tucked between her legs. She started being even more cold to me after that day and started giving me unfair detentions for not sitting still and doodling on the side of my worksheets. Even then, outside of school we went to the same art studio sometimes. Weird that someone who hates art so much likes to paint, and poisoned the art director against me and got me put into a lower class. When me mom found out about this, she started the real revenge. My mom has never been a PTA mom. She honestly can't stand most of the PTA members and their kids are chosen as favorites at my school and use this power to bully others, including me and my friends. My mom is however friends with a very lovely woman on the county school board, which has more power than the PTA. She told her friend everything that had happened and supplied all the doctor's notes needed to prove I needed my cast. Her friend managed to convince the rest of the board that Mrs. Tablet was discriminating against an impaired student, given her comments about me being slower at work and just wearing the cast to slack off, along with detentions related to me not sitting still when she knew I had nervous movements and slight ADHD. At the art studio, my mother pulled me from the classes. I took it upon myself to inform the fellow kids about why, and rumors spread quickly. Soon enough kids were getting pulled left and right and my art teacher was pulling at strings to try and get the situation under control. I actually think the studio went into temporary closure before reopening again. She was suspended for a week to go under investigation and it turns out she treated a lot of the unique, as she put it, students in a similar way. She was verbally reprimanded by 2 different departments, and instead of getting her standard raise over the next 3 years, she'll only get half of that. Not only that, but she had to retake a course on how to properly treat students, and if she's ever caught to cross this line again, she'll lose tenure. She'll just be getting her bonus back at the start of next school year and I'd just like to say that I hope she learned her lesson. Smiley face. TLDR. Teacher claims I'm faking my broken wrist, calls my mom. My mom calls her friend at the county school board and gets her suspended for discrimination, and gets unfair art program temporarily closed. Edit. I had misremembered the punishment given to that teacher. Upon asking my mom to retell the story, I fixed it to make it accurate. Thank you to the Redditor that pointed out the mistake. I suppose that my 12-year-old self remembered a raise as a bonus for some reason. I fell off the monkey bars in after-school care and landed fist down in the rocks below. Who puts rocks under a playground? The teacher did not believe I broke my arm and was annoyed by my wailing. She made me wait until my usual pickup time for a few hours instead of calling home to my parents. Turns out that my arm was broke in 4 places and I broke my wrist. Face with rolling eyes. Oh God. Flashbacks. So I slipped on the ice walking to school. I was like 7 or something and landed on my wrist. I told the teacher it really hurt. She said there was nothing wrong. I told the first aid lady it hurt. She said there was nothing wrong. They forced me to do sport. And I was in so much pain, but like they said, nothing wrong. My mom picked me up from school that day, saw I was basically green from the pain and took me to the hospital, where I got a cast because my wrist was broken. My sister got hit on the head with a color guard pole, just a few inches away from her eye. The band director refused to let her go to the nurse or call my mom. By the time my mom picked her up, she had a golf ball-sized knot over her eye and the doctor had to hold it back so that my sister could remove her contact. She had a mild concussion, and a black eye that lasted for several weeks. Later that year the band went to a competition and didn't get back to the high school until midnight. He refused to let the kids into the school to call their parents, and this was pre-cell phones. My sister didn't manage a ride and my mom fell asleep waiting, so she waited outside the school until 2 a.m., alone. At the end of the school year all 40 members of the band had been to the office with their parents to complain about him. The complaints ranged from him not actually teaching classes, showing up drunk, hitting on the 16-year-old girls, and a few others, but it's been 20 years so I only remember the highlights. He got fired and I don't think he was ever hired anywhere to teach again. I was always getting hurt at school, but in my case the school was telling my mom to pick me up and my mom asked if I couldn't just sit with the nurse until the end of the day because she was too busy with work. One time it turned out I had torn a ligament in my knee, and after getting an X-ray I also ended up having surgery a year later for another issue. My mom also would send me to school even if I was sick. If I tried to tell her I was sick she'd assume I was lying and told me if I stayed home I'd have to lay in bed with no TV, computer, or phone for the whole day, which as a little kid would just make me choose school over laying in bed. My little sister, 12 at the time, fell at school and hurt her wrist. She went to the school nurse who said she was fine. She told our mom about her wrist, but she took the nurse's word that nothing was seriously wrong and didn't take her to the doctors, even though her wrist was a bit swollen. 6 weeks go by, and my sister's wrist still hurts and looks like a tennis ball. My mum sees it one day and is shocked. She takes her to the hospital, and her wrist had broken and started healing incorrectly. She needed a wrist brace for a while to try and lessen the damage, but her wrists are still asymmetrical. Coincidentally, the same thing, broken wrist, ignored by the nurse, happened to my uncle when he attended the same high school, except my grandparents took him to the doctors straight away.